Hello, morning to everybody. Good Sunday morning to you. I suppose some of you may be getting out of church soon, going to church soon. I am in God's church, if you will. I'm outside. It is actually very windy in the Washington D.C. area today, but it's warm. I don't even really need this on. I just have a little stain I'm trying to cover. Plus, you should always keep your neck warm, right? Even if it is a little breeze. So I just wanted to come on and first apologize to all of my followers because I have not posted a lot of new content. As a lot of you know, I don't have a little part-time job where I can spend all day making cute little videos. That I have three jobs essentially. I was on C-SPAN the other day calling in on some advocacy issues. Um, an educator, also an attorney. A lot of you know that. So, and then I have a full-time job as a mother, you know. So, it's sometimes the food is being cooked, it's just not being videotaped and edited and whatnot. Because what I mean about that Sade reference, going back to it, is that I need for all of my videos to have purpose and meaning. If I wanted to just show off all the different crafty ways that I can cook, that'd be a whole different video channel, and it would be, quick and dirty content every night of the week. um I am an excellent cook. I made shrimp scampi the other night for dinner for the family, and and it's something I've made in the past for others. So my cooking skills are not limited to West Indian cooking or American cooking or African American cooking in terms of soul food. I can do all of them. And I'm lucky to come from a long line of great cooks on both my father and my mother's side. But focusing on my father's side, that is being my Crujan side, I am one of several people I know in our broader community that is trying to help keep the old ways alive in order to help keep our culture alive. Crucian culture is very unique, it's very distinct. It's not that we're not a part of the Virgin Islands, we absolutely are. But it has always been that way. Just the physical proximity itself, or lack thereof, is an easy way to begin to understand how our different food cultures might have evolved differently. Don't forget that St. Croix used to be the breadbasket of the Caribbean. So we were growing pretty much everything in our fertile soils and hills and lands. So agriculture has always been a big part. That means freshness and fresh food and letting those fresh flavors speak for themselves are a part of our cuisine. Another part of our cuisine and our culture is that we may have to make do with what we had. We were able to make very delicious, elegant dishes that are comfort foods. I call them elegant, like it's a filet mignon on the plate. But I bet if Gordon Ramsay had a little taste, he would, from a good Persian cook, he would, talk about it in the same way. But that's the beauty of our food, is the simplicity of our food, because it is the cooking techniques, the flavoring techniques, the types of flavorings, and the lack of certain flavorings that makes Crucian cuisine so unique. Of course, we share things with our fellow islands and the Caribbean, not the least of which are our own, our own two sister islands, but islands in between. So we all have different, make a Johnny cake or might have a different word for it. I know Trini's call them bakes, and Trini bakes are great. They're nice and they're big. We all know about stew this, stew that, tamarind ball. We all, tamarind fruit, sauerkraut. We have the same things and similar cooking ideas like beignets, and call them puffs in Liberia. And I think they call them something similar to that in Nigeria. So all of our cooking, the basis of it is African, and we are all of the African diaspora, no matter how diverse your family is. But that's the other part to point out about Crucian cooking. We were one of the Virgin Islands itself is one of the most diverse sets of islands because since before we became a U.S. territory, we were an open port. And what do you think they were shipping across the world and trading across the world in the 1600s, the 1700s? Because don't forget, had 7 different flags on us, including the French and the Spanish, Danish and the U.S. being the longest. We also had indigenous people here who were eventually wiped out by Columbus and his smallpox, or just murdering Indians in general, indigenous people in general. And then as the colonizations vary, we know that the basis of a lot of our food is Danish. So when I say I have something to say, it means that I take the time to research. Yes, of course, there are things in my head from childhood that will never go away in terms of recipes. Yes, there are recipes that I have perfected over the years from watching, my elders and others cook them, more experienced Cajun cooks or trained in Grecian food, such as my mother. My mother is from the States and she's a fabulous cook. Her family originates from North Carolina. And so, traditional Southern soul food. Now, North Carolina's different. Like, don't compare it to Georgia. North Carolina's a little different because they're by the water and it was a big farming community. But my mother's an excellent cook. And it's not that difficult to conceive of how foods and food techniques and foods that we eat are common in the diaspora because of the trade triangle. Many American born enslaved people were shipped to the Caribbean. 90% of the Africans that were kidnapped, 85 to 90%, some historians differ, but 85 to 90% of the kidnapped Africans from Africa came from Africa, and 85 to 90% of them were dropped off in the Caribbean and in South America. Only 10%, roughly 10 to 15% of them were dropped off or transported then directly to America. So we have been able to, even our cooking stoves and cooking with smaller fires as opposed to huge fires, Native Americans have been criticizing white people for that, since they first touched, land. So I'm going on of a little of a ramble now, but what I'm trying to say is our food is unique to our culture. And while we are proudly one Virgin Islands, we as Crucians are particularly proud of our cuisine, because one thing that has not happened with our cuisine is that the proximity that keeps us apart has actually protected us or protected the integrity of the cuisine. St. Thomas has always been a cosmopolitan port, a shipping port for different people from all over the world to come, which means that different foodstuffs and spices and things like that were coming into the VI. We cannot forget about the influence of Indian workers brought in by the British to Trinidad and Tobago, to Guyana, and finding that they sometimes shipped you money or would hire them out to work on other islands in the Antilles. So all of that is blended in our food, as well as the influence of our primary colonizer. And so when I'm making a video about food, I'm not doing it to get likes or showing you a recipe. I'm not doing it because um, I I'm not doing it for any other reason than I say, okay, this is something that I need to put on my channel. If the purpose of my channel is to help preserve, pass on tradition through food, to also to show the proper way, but also show newer modern techniques that can make it a little easier, because I'm gonna tell you right now, me and sitting all day with broke up coconut, grating coconut for coconut tart, because then you gotta squeeze it out and dry it. I don't have time for all of that. I take coconut from the bag, I let it soak in water to get all that extra sugar and everything out. I taste, does this just taste like plain coconut? And then I let it dry, and then that's what I use to make sugar cake. So what time do I look like I have to be grating coconut all day? That was the job of the children. My father told me, "You want sugar cake? Then your job is to grind coconut, to shred it." If you want anything having to do with almond, their other job was picking the almonds. My father could pick an almond out the shell without even looking, because if they wanted treats, they had to help out in it. But we don't have the little help, the little children to run around and help us. But we are trying to teach it to our progeny and whatnot. And again, that's part of what this channel is about. So I hope that you all understand that you're not going to always see daily posts from me. If you do, it would just be a bunch of nonsense to sort of tease you about how good my food is and not show you or give you guidance on how to do it. Anybody can do that. Anybody can seduce people with images. But if you don't know the true history of the flavors of Virgin Island cooking, and specifically what I'm talking about is Crucian cooking. I'm not talking about Virgin Islands cooking. I'm not talking about our commonality. I'm speaking about specifically the Crucian cuisine, the original cuisine of the Virgin Islands. I don't want to say the original, but certainly well known for hundreds of years for their culinary skills. We have been protected because we are so far away from the more cosmopolitan era places. St. John keeps a very quiet, peaceful place. You can't have it any other way on St. John. There's no whole bunch of nightclubs and roads and things like that. I mean, they have paved roads, but if you've been to St. John, you understand. It's very different from St. Thomas, going up and down places like called Suicide Hill, Monkey Hill. You know what I mean? It's very different, and there are tourists there all the time. I remember when I lived there, and I knew for a long time that I wasn't going to find Crucian cooking on St. Thomas unless I made it myself. Until I had a young lady who worked with me. I always wonder why her food. She's told me, and become to find out. Long story short, her mother is actually I know the family name, and her mother is actually Crucian by blood. And so I said, that's why Abby's food is always smell and taste so good when she brings it in, because her mother's making it. So, and me and my St. Thomas friends used to go back and forth, but there is a difference. There is a difference in our food, just like there's a difference in our food from Jamaican food, from Trinidadian food, from Guyanese food, from any of the our beautiful islands with beautiful cuisine across this one Caribbean. And that being said, ours is ours, and ours is not well known. And so it is important as we try to get more people to recognize the beauty and the flavor of Crucian cooking or Virgin Islands cooking as a whole. What we as Crucian cooks do our best to is to preserve the natural simplicity of our cooking, so that you are getting the true flavors in the most original way possible. People, somebody said, well, St. Croix, the VI is not known for its such and such. And I said, well, of course it's not known for its such and such. We're not known for anything. Nobody ever says, you watch TV. Just watch TV. Anytime they refer to anything having to do with Caribbean food, it's jerk chicken, right? Am I lying? I got some jerk chicken waiting for me in the fridge. Oh, were you at so and so's jerk house? You like jerk? Oh, if you meet people who find out that you're part West Indian, oh, can you make jerk chicken? That is literally the jerk chicken and fried plantain, which they still call plantain, which tells you who you're dealing with and who you're not dealing with. Okay, it's not plantain, it's plantain. We all know that. So, and, but that's really the extent of it. That is truly the extent of it. The bounty of food and recipes that you can find in Crucian cooking and in general VI cooking is so different and so unique and so flavorful and so different. Jamaicans are known for heat, 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 and they're known for a lot of strong, strong spice. And I don't mean spice like spicy, but they're known for their strong uses of allspice, um, things like cloves in all dishes. Now, we use spice in our dishes too, all dishes, but we use them subtly, and then there are more that we use than others because they are better at enhancing the flavors. And more importantly, those deep, earthy spices, cloves, cinnamon, that is a very, very British thing. And they were colonized by the Brits. who are not known for their culinary prowess. All right, so I just leave it at that. So I just wanted to give you that. I say 15 minutes is enough for me to stop talking. Is that I bring this to you when I believe it's important to you. Sometimes I don't even post my own stuff. I share from other people because I'm like, this is true and correct. And if I have permission to share it so that others can learn, even myself to learn. I know by heart at least five plants to pick bush for callaloo. My auntie has done the best to show me over the years. My stepmother has also helped me. And then it's just stuff you remember that was in callaloo. Um, but I still need some instructions sometimes, and I'm contemplating callaloo recipe. You know what I mean? So none of us are perfect, and that's why we need to listen to people who have gone and accomplished before us, who have set the standard, so that we can reach that standard. And I will just tell you, as my father told me, as I was teaching my son about our culture and stuff, I was showing him how to make homemade glue, and I said the name of the wrong tree. I said the manganiel tree. He said, no. You don't get that from Manganiel Kitty. I'm like, oh, of course, Manganiel. How'd that slip out? But he just very much corrected me. This was many years ago. He said, if you're going to teach the history and the culture, you need to make sure you're doing it the right way. You have a plan to do something different and unique, fine. But if you don't know the right way, the first way, then you have no foundation, no basis on which to build or grow on. So that's what I try to do. So what I've decided to do, since the live is not working, I took the time to kind of bring out some of the tools to show you when I say I'm making it authentically, this is what I mean. So of course, I've shared with you, Lau, we cook um, because this is our Crucian Bible, right? However, there are other cookbooks that are about Virgin Islands food that are very helpful. There was one produced by UVI many, many years ago in the 80s, but it may still be in print. And it not only shows you the traditional, and they also account for how it may vary from St. Croix to St. Thomas to St. John. So they did a lot of research on that. So that cookbook would really be true Virgin Islands cooking. And I'm gonna try to find the link for that. My sister has the book, but when I go to her house for books, she just treat it like a library. I can't check some books out. So like her we cook is blue. One of the first original ones with the hard plastic blue cover. Mine is a reprint, and you can get this directly from the Loetz family. They own a storage shop right across from Lorraine. And if you look it up, I think I've posted it before, so it should be there. Or just look for, I think it is Sunshine Storage right in Lorraine, and call the sons, the grandsons, and granddaughters, and whoever are there from Miss Loetz can get you the book. You can also call the contact the St. Croix, uh, or is it the oh God, Heritage Society through WIM. Okay, I also go very far back. I'm sorry that this is backwards. I'll try to flip it over, but this says Priceless Heritage. And this is specifically from the estate of St. George, where I grew up. So I'm a West girl from state St. George. And this could tell you how long I've had this thing, because the book when I buy it was $5. When you find a $5 book for so it's the history and lore of Estate St. George, home of the St. Croix Village Botanical Garden. And what's so beautiful about this is that this is going back into the annals of history, the 17th century, that's the 1600s. 1587, okay? 1590, when we're talking about when native indigenous people were still on the land. So we're learning about how they grew their food and how they used their food, and how you can still see the connections to how we use it today. Like guava berry. Guava berry is a healing plant. They didn't brew it up for liquor. They use guava berry as a healing plant, and it has a ton of medicinal purposes. So I also like to go back and see, like this, for example. Okay, So, food, the most important concern of millions of people throughout the world today, was also the chief concern of the St. George worker. Its importance was recognized by the Danes after the St. John riots. St. John grew a lot of food too. Each child reaching 10 years of age by law was given a small plot, usually 20 feet by 20 feet. Oh, Jesus. Oh God, the wind! I'm trying to tell you, but it feels good to just be outside and not stuck outside. So I have this thing off. So ready? So I'm picking back up. They had a 20 by 20 plot for growing food. We've all seen those plots, and we know everybody. Even my father still has plot for plants and still plants food in the yard. I mean, I don't really have plots. I tried to grow some vegetables over there last summer, and my dog, who I love very much, who is a very good guard dog, and loves beignets. He always gets the first test beignet. He can't wait. But let me tell you about the food. Each estate set aside land for provision grounds. We all know provisions, right? Yams and other crops planted when the rainy season began ripen after Christmas. When the season was favorable, the food produced lasted several months or until the yams came back to sprout and the corn became wormy. So we used to grow in large amounts yam and corn. hmm Okay. Then, when that happened, the estate provisions were supplemented by rations from the cask, in quotes. The weekly ration was taken completely from casks of wheat flour, corn flour, where you think we get our fungi from, salted fish, we all know saltfish, salt pork, and salt beef, after the provisions grown on the estate were finished. So we sustained ourselves through our gardening. And not only did we do that, but we passed it on so that, we knew how to do it in a cycle, in a circle, so that we could live throughout the year. Okay, so here we go. The chief staple was salted herring and salted shad, the cheapest fish. So cod was expensive, but eventually it all became cod. It is still not clear why more cassava was not planted, as cassava matured in the off season when supplies of yam and corn were getting scarce. During crop season, quantities of cane juice, sugar, and molasses were consumed. Rum flowed freely during the celebrations marking Christmas and the end of crop time. So, this is the most interesting thing. And a lot of people are surprised when they taste my vegetables because I generally don't cook my vegetables with meat. If I really, really want some meat in the vegetable, I might use a piece of bacon. Now, again, I'm coming from the other side of me where the culinary techniques for seasoning vegetables very much rely on either fresh or some sort of preserved meat. That's just the way it is in the South. That's how you bring flavor. I mean, we use it when we make, whatever it is we make in kalaloo, seasoned rice, when you're dealing with pig knuckles and them thing, all of that is sort of the same idea. So again, that triangle that brings us all together. But you're going to see that in the islands, meat was expensive. You couldn't just use meat to flavor, and and we're talking about salt meats with a lot of fat, not good pieces of meat, because of course the enslaved Africans and African Americans of the or North America couldn't just have meat whenever they wanted. They got it on special occasion too, and when they did get meat, it was the things like the fat, the bones, the pigtail, or whatever. Okay, kind of like us. So one thing you'll notice is that Crucian vegetables have always generally been seasoned vegetarian. The private plots allotted to individuals were carefully tended. You have to take care of your fresh grown vegetable garden. They provided the vegetables and herbs that, in the hands of a good cook, turned a few basic foodstuffs into savory dishes. Do you understand? That's the root of Crucian cooking. Many kinds of peppers, chivo, thyme were used to flavor food. Thyme, sweet marjoram, anise, boiled Mabi bark. So we incorporate spice, but we use what was more best for our palate. and also probably what we may have learned from the indigenous natives, that the few that our African ancestors that ended up, at least here on Saint John, on Saint Croix, might have encountered. Okay, and it goes on. In addition to boiled mabi bark were added to sugar and water to produce a tasty beverage. We know that. Sorrel and guava berry gave color and flavor, particularly for Christmas beverages. The Christmas celebration did not extend through Three Kings Day as it does today. Three Kings Day was imported from Puerto Rico, definitely within the 20th century, maybe a little bit before, as Roman Catholicism spread further on St. Croix. Remember, it was the Dutch Reformed Church, Lutheran, who set up here primarily. But the Catholic Church has had a long, long, long presence, certainly in St. Thomas. And so, anyway, that's just our little thing for the day. Last thing I'll share with you. In the rainy season, uncultivated plants sprang up, such as Whitey Mary, you need that for Kalaloo, Boar, purslane, I think we would just call that posting, centipede plant, and Kalaloo. Remember, Kalaloo is not just the name of the soup. Kalaloo is a plant with little not flowers, leaves on it. Picking for Kalaloo, that's a lot of work. Okay? They were picked and put into the pot along with pond crab. We know what that is. That's land crab. They call it pond crab here, but it's land crab. And remember, you have to clean those out too. Fish and any meat available to make kalaloo. A Crucian soul food, as they might call it. And there's everything in kalaloo. Yes, you can have fish kalaloo. You can have vegetarian kalaloo, no meat whatsoever, with just punji. But true, 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 from connection to our indigenous ancestors. Hallelujah. Had meat in it. It had whatever kind of, even deer, because deer was very plentiful. So this is a very good book if you get a chance to get on it. I also look at a lot of pictures to get my culinary clues. And of course, this is all after I have checked with my father, like I'm 100%, like I'm 99.9% sure about something, and I'll call or I'll share my videos with him, and he'll pick up on a mistake I might have made, and I'll go back and let the people know and correct it. I think on my thing for hot pepper sauce, I think I had to do that. Um, then my aunt Cecilia is the matriarch of our family since my grandmother passed, since my aunt Rita passed. So she is all we have left in terms of the female and the matriarch in the family. And she is an amazing cook. I mean, just an amazing cook. She made the black cake for my brother's wedding. I think she made it for my sister's wedding too. I don't know when the marriage is coming, but I hope my auntie long enough around so at least I can stand in the kitchen and she can tell me I'll make the black cake myself. Um, I also use photographs. So not only old time photographs to see what was at the market, to see what plants were where, um, to see what was served to the Danes, and read The Danes versus Us. This is a great book. It's in both English and Danish, and it's called St. Croix Historic Photos, and that's what it is with some text. And I also take pictures at home. AgriFest, I take pictures of everything, and I make sure that I'm taking the pictures from tables of Crucian cooks. And sometimes I'll see some other cooks who may not necessarily be Crucian, there's something kind of cool about the spin they did on it. And then I'll remember how my father will remind me, oh, well, this is not native to our island. It was brought here by such and such. Butter bread. Butter bread is not native to us. But you cannot, I don't know any Crucian that cannot imagine a morning starting without bush cheese, butter bread and cheese, right? What other breakfast is there besides some saltfish, spinach, or boiled egg? So, but that came to us through immigrants, through immigration, but it's now very much a part of our culture. Curry is another one of those things. You would not necessarily find, you would find curry leaves, but you wouldn't necessarily find the spiced curry in something going back as way back as this. But curry has been a part of our palate for well over 100 years at least, based on my research at looking at shipping and export reports and the types of things that were brought into St. Croix that changed or we had to use to evolve and develop new recipes, etc. And don't forget, we were cooking for the Danes, so we also had to think about their palate. And I think I have a question about this, but that I'm going to try to answer as best I can. But I know I did a quick video about where red grout came from. I mean, red grout, I'm thinking my whole life is, man, this is as Crucian as it gets, or VI as it gets, right? Red grout is a Danish dessert. It's a Danish dessert, and it's literally called red grout. Rodgrod, actually, Rodgrod. And we change it, over time to red grout because we had to replace the strawberries and raspberries that they used traditionally in the Danish version with what red we had on the island. And when you think about it, it's a little bit hard, right? So we use the coloring of cactus plant, cactus fruit, bright red. Because guava, even a good guava, is not bright, bright, bright red. It could be a bright pink, a dark pink. You can see a deeply colored guava, but you're not going to see a bright red guava. And so, what our foremothers did was use the juice from cactus fruit to do it. So, yeah. And here it is. Here it is right now. Roggrot midfleur. Red pudding with red fruit pudding with cream. That is what this is. So we even, it's just amazing. You can go back and look at that. So when I tell you that I am doing my best to keep it authentic, I'm also all about trying to make it um, easy when it can be easy for the modern Crucian cook. I also acknowledge that tastes, palates, medical needs, all of those things vary. But if I can show you the original version, sorry, I dropped my book. If I can show you the original version to the best of my ability, according to my aunt who is 90 years old, according to my father, okay, who grew up in originally in Watergut, then in Aldersville, and went on to the States, got his education and doctorate, and came with a family and marriage. And so, you know, I just take it very seriously. And I just wanted to make sure that you all knew how much I took it seriously. Even when I can catch my auntie in a good minute between her Tom and Jerry time, which she vexed about because whoever the new cable people them is on in the VI, um, she can't get her Tom and Jerry, so somebody needs to fix that, okay? But what I'm gonna do now is, since we couldn't do the live because of the transmission, I'm just gonna go with the questions. And if you just give me a second, I should be able to find some questions that I jotted down. I could have just screenshotted them, but I said, you know what? There's no need for that because my God, my yeah, here it is. My purse is bad. There's really no need for that because you got internet trolls that will take a person's profile picture or screen name or whatever and scroll them down, and that's not necessary. So let me just start up with this one. I'll start with the first one. This person says, first initial is C, like my last initial. They say, I looked up Lossinger and found your YouTube channel. Can you make it? So he's asking about Lossinger. He's asking about the traditional peppermint stick candy that was, just a twist. It's just a straight peppermint stick twist, but it was very powerful. Has a nice, airy, but still sugary crunch to it. So it's not like it just melts in your mouth. It kind of blends and goes smoothly. And it was something that we kids enjoyed as a treat, but definitely had in large amounts when we were sick. So if you had sore throat, cold coming on, cough coming on, your mother, father, grandmother would give you, break off a piece of lozenge and tell you to eat it, or give you a whole one and say, suck down on it until this part done, or whatever. So I cannot make lozenge, but if you, probably the reason why you found my channel, see, is because I did post a video of a true blue Crucian cook, a granny cook, making lozenge at Wim House. And so if you scroll down, you'll see that video of her making it. Now, it's not going to give you the because like all Crucian cooks, I'm like, she did give some parameters from the beginning, in terms of how much she was using of this generally. But the long and short of it, lozenge starts as she started with a uh, liquidized sugar base. So you put the sugar in the pan and you melt it and do it in a pot, not a flat pan. I saw her use a pot. And basically, if you do that on the right heat, the sugar will just melt down and become liquid sugar. Okay. And then it's poured out, but you have to work with it very carefully because once it cools, it's hard. And so lozenge it takes some skill. Me, I don't mess with hot candy. I can do sugar cake when it's hot from the pot. Me messing with no melted sugar. No, 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 no. That's for a real old time cook or somebody who knows or is comfortable making sugars. So if you've made candies before, see, and you know how to basically liquefy sugar, just watch the video and see what you can pick up from the granny and watch her movements. Also, try to ignore the irritating tourists in the back. We are always so happy when people come to tour, but you don't rush some Crucian cook. It done when it done, right? Okay. So see, I hope that I can't make it, but I posted a video quite some time ago. What I'll do is I'll try to boost it. Next one. When will you make the red grout dessert? Ah, this one is Z. So first name Z. Begins with a Z. When will you make the red grout dessert? I am trying. You know why? Because it would be very easy to show you how to do it the quick way. And I think I may ultimately have to do that because you are not the only one who's asked about the red grout and why now red grout is the best. But what I've really, really been trying to do, Z, is do it the old fashioned way. And I'm just having trouble getting the quality of ingredients that I need, specifically the quality of guava with flavor. It's hit or miss in the international store. Sometimes my best bet is to ask my father whatever is in season and have him send it overnight for me. Um, you know, so what I'm trying to do is it the original way. Even the red cactus fruit that I'm getting from the stores now, from the good international stores, you know what I mean, the good ones, even the coloring is not coming out as nice. I've even played around with the idea of how I could soften, loosen guava paste and use that to bring that good bold guava flavor. And then maybe if I needed to adjust the color. So I was really trying to find a way to make it as authentically as possible. But that has been a challenge for some months right now. And so what I'm going to do is I'm gonna put a little mark that I'm gonna make a dessert video, and that I'm gonna make it red brown, and we'll do it the way the ladies on the island do it today with some tapioca and a little bit of red food coloring. I don't know where that video is. I'll pull it up, and if I need to, I will remake it. And that is to make valincrans. All that is the Danish name for the butter cookie in the butter cookie tin, the blue one, the one that's like a circle, and it's swirl and go like so, but they don't fully connect, and it's always so buttery and brown on the low edges on the top and everything. Valinskrams. So I can show you how to make those because I've made those several times before, and they're easy, and they're always, I remember as a kid when you would go to Government House in Christiansted and meet the governor and the first lady, and they would give you a bag of candy for Christmas. Sometimes you would get cookies too, and they had those, and I remember that. So I'll try to make those too, but I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so I may have to give up my hunt and my efforts to try to do the red grout the way I wanted to, and just show you how to do it the way every cook on St. Croix basically does it today. And it's just as delicious. It'll be great. Give me a second. Let me just take a little sip. Oh, can you make brown stewed chicken? The answer is no. You know why the answer is no? Because there's no such thing as brown stew chicken in Crucian food. And I am not a Jamaican cook. We don't brown stew anything. If you go onto St. Croix today and you go to the shop for some lunch and you see somebody that's serving brown stew chicken, turn around, walk away. There's no such thing in Crucian food. There is brownness to our stewed chicken, but the brown comes from the chicken. You understand? There's no flour in it. There's nothing. It's about how you brown the chicken first, how you season and brown the chicken first, how you get what the professional chefs call fond, but we know the little sticky part at the bottom that you want to scrape up and get in there. That's where the brown comes from. And that's the most challenging part because once you get that in, stewed chicken is easy. It's maybe five vegetables and herbs mixed together with a touch of pound salt and, a couple of other little things. Tomato, you can use tomato paste, but if you want to do it old school, old fashioned, chop up fresh tomato. If you want to do it old school, early to mid 20th century style, still perfectly acceptable and delicious, use canned tomato. And if you want to do even more modern, you truly do not have the time, you got to use a little bit of tomato sauce in it, okay? When you make your stewed chicken. But you know what? I'm trying to think what would be the most easiest thing for me today because I got all these chicken wings on sale and they're fresh and they're good. They act like chicken wing used to be poor man's food. Now they act like a chicken is going extinct. You have to pay $25 this, 20 something dollars that for a pack of chicken wings. I found two big packs, $22 together. So maybe I'll mix two. Do I have carrot? I know I have potato. Maybe I'll do that. I might have to make a run to the store, but it's still early. So thank you for that question. There's no such thing as brown stew chicken. If you see it anywhere in the Virgin Islands, I will 100% guarantee to you that it was not made by a Crucian cook. It is not authentically Crucian. It's not authentically Tomian. It is not authentically Saint Jonian and Johnny there. We don't do that. We don't use a lot of flour and stuff to create the roux and the bases of our stews and whatnot. Not a lot of that. Very, very few instances. So if you see it, you're walking and you see it and you want some and you think you're gonna get brown stew chicken from Jamaica, don't do it. My personal opinion is that if somebody is selling you brown stew chicken on in the VI, unless their shop got green, yellow, black all over the place and it's a Jamaican cook, don't eat it because it's gonna make your stomach bubble because somebody done made up something that's not from the VI. You just want stew chicken, stew meat, stew chicken. They got stew fish, stew. You can pretty much stew anything. Stew a goat. You can stew deer. Many people. My father told me he remembered my grandmother taking a deer out from something like 25, 30 yards with a single rod. Don't mess with Big Ann. I am. My grandmother was mean, mean, but it was mean with love. She didn't know any other way, um, and she had her ways of showing love, and that was definitely through food. So I'm so grateful for her to that. I know you're somewhere, uh, putting people in their place and being in charge. God bless Granny. Thank you, a little card here. It says, thank you so much for your pound salt recipe. I followed a different video and it was brown, very salty, and the whole thing tasted like allspice. Yours tasted the way I remember it. What went wrong? So thank you so much for your. I followed a different video. Okay, so it wasn't my video. It must have been somebody else, and it came out brown. So honey, all I can tell you is that if you watch the video on how to make Crucian pound salt, and the result that you got was brown and too salty and overwhelming with spice, the only thing I can tell you is that didn't follow an authentic Cajun recipe, or they did their version of pound salt. It's likely that they may have some other Caribbean blood flowing through them, and they have their version of that kind of thing, and did it because the basis of pound salt is salt and herbs. Yes, there is. You don't actually put allspice in it. You put allspice in it if you can't get mace, but you put mace in it. Okay, and mace is a very, very strong, powerful flavor. You put nutmeg in it. That's another strong, powerful flavor. But you wouldn't put mace and nutmeg, and you at all. And if you do are in a pinch have to use allspice, be very careful because you also put clove in pound salt seasoning, which allspice has a very heavy clove taste to it as well. So just be careful. The one of the videos, I don't, like I said, I don't post for likes and views. I don't get paid to do any of this stuff. But I noticed that my pound salt seasoning video had over 500 views. And even one of my students, she is Haitian. Um, she said her mother had watched the video over and over again and was making some of her own. And Haitians have good food, so I was really kind of you know uh, proud and a little bit taken aback that this woman, who I know could obviously cook very well, was relying on my pound salt recipe. So yeah, so again, to go back to it, pound salt is the basis is salt and herbs, and we used to use rock salt. When it was salt making day, the ladies would go out to Salt Pond River or Salt Pond in Frederickstead to scoop and dry salt. So sea salt was originally our source of salt. Sea salt or homemade drawn salt from the salt pond. And even today, if you drive past Salt Pond, you'll see especially if the water is high. You'll see bubbles, white bubbles, frothy bubbles. It's the water. I don't know if anybody's tried to make salt from salt pound out of recent years. I don't know. But if somebody has, let me know because then that tells us the water's still good and we can use it. But yes, it shouldn't be. So you said it was brown. It shouldn't be primarily brown. The overwhelming color should be green. What you said salty. I mean, that's kind of a hard one to criticize because it's pound salt. So the salt taste is going to hit you, but it should be distributed enough in larger chunks to um, to make that salt taste more palatable. And the problem is somebody might be using measurements for rock salt and using iodized table salt instead, and that's almost double the salt. So make sure that the recipe that you're following, if you don't use mine, if you want to use somebody else's, but make sure that if they're using table salt, that the amount is reduced because that's probably what has happened. And cruiser cooks have had to adjust over the years. The ladies that make pound salt, on a daily basis, or at least weekly basis to sell or what have you, they certainly use table salt, but they know to adjust it because it's the thing is different than sea salt. And sea salt has a wonderful, unique taste. I like to use Himalayan pink salt because it gives me that earthy flavor, but you could also use kosher salt. You could use sea salt. Yeah. But yeah, if you're using table salt, bring it down. Allspice, like I said, it shouldn't. The spices that are in pound salt seasoning are the ones that are going to hit the back of your palate in the cooked food. So cardamom, which is a very, very strong spice, and if you use too much of it, can have a medicinal taste to it. But when you put it in the right way, the right amount for pound salt, and once it cooks and blends with the other flavors, that cardamom smooths everything out. Even the bit of clove that Trisha, let me just pull out Miss McKay because my recipe is based on hers and with a few secret ingredients um, of my own that I discovered for myself, but also, checking in with my auntie. Uh, Cajun salt seasoning is a mixture of salt and herbs. In the good old days, it was rock or pound salt. Pound salt. I mean, I'm telling you the truth. Herbs started with thyme, celery, parsley, and then the spices were black pepper, garlic, cardamom, mace, and chives. There's no allspice in it. There's no cumin in Crucian pound salt seasoning. So, baby, I'm sorry that you had a horrible experience with the pound salt recipe that you followed. I would can only suggest that uh, you get yourself a book from Miss McKay from the McKay family. I think I said Lois earlier, but it's a McKay family. Or you check my video and then make it your own. But think hard to when you had it. Pound salt is always used on fish. If you had good old fashioned fried pot fish, fried fish from in St. Croix or anywhere in the VI, but especially St. Croix, that's pound salt that you're tasting. Roast pork, any kind of stew, seasoned rice, pound salt is in all of that. Yeah, I mean, so just think back, take your tongue on memory trip down memory lane and remember I'm tasting what tastes familiar. Maybe I'm missing something. I remember such and such kind of taste, and it'll come to you. Your ancestors are. Listen. I pray to my grandma and all my ancestors before me before I ever do a cake. Both of my grandmothers, my Yankee and my Crucian grandmother. Both of them. Because it's your ancestors whispering in your ear that will tell you when to stop. Right? Okay. Let's do the last one because my dog wants to play, and I am being a little bit of a bum because I do have grades to do for my students. So I'll just do this one. I saw today, sorry, reading from here, I jotted it down. But again, I jotted it down. It was a really long question, so I'm going to try it. I saw a photo of a Johnny cake that said, "No hole in my Johnny cake." I thought Johnny cake was supposed to have a hole in it. So maybe I think I'm literally writing as they wrote it because the proper way was I thought Johnny cakes should have bubbles or holes in it, right? Well, that depends. There are more than one way to make a Johnny cake. Um, Johnny cakes have a great history. We get the Johnny not from a guy, but from the word journey, journey cake. They would be made and they were very hearty and substantial. And they were originally baked. And your man or loved one or whoever who worked out in the field will have a couple of journey cakes, Johnny cakes, with them for the day out cutting cane and in between break time, lunchtime, or whatever little break the overseer or whoever was given, they could reach in their pocket and get a bite and fuel themselves up. So they were originally called journey cakes. And also, just as a quick sort of, this is how we're connected through the triangle thing. They have Johnny cakes in the South, which are also called hoe cakes, but they're made with corn flour and bacon fat and they used to be cooked on the flat part of a hot hoe. So most people, I think, today call them hoe cakes, but in some regions of the South, they will still be called Johnny cakes, and they're basically a cornmeal based pancake made with bacon fat. So, and just like they have baked in Trinidad, but it's all kind of the same thing coming out of that triangle. There's a word for there's so many different African fry breads. Native Americans have fry bread. So to this whole issue of bubbles. So originally Johnny cakes were baked. And baked Johnny cakes don't usually have bubbles in it. Not usually. But the one thing about baked Johnny cakes that you have to be careful about is you do not want to bake them for too long. You almost want to slightly, when I say slightly under bake them, make sure they look done. Make sure for the most part they're done inside. You understand? But if you pull it out and you feel like, okay, it's not raw, it's not dough, it's sticking, it's crumbs, but the crumbs are sticking in a moist way. That's when you turn off the oven and let the Johnny cake sit. You can bring them out and set them uncovered, or you can, if you want to risk it, leave it in the oven, but you might forget and then they end up getting too hard. So, like my dad said, shared with me when I first discovered it, they can be baked as well, and that's how they were originally served, was baked. But as more influence and more things started to come into the Persian cooking diaspora, including the availability of cooking oil or finding new ways to stretch foods like rendered fats. Remember, the Danes are the pork kings of the world. They know the ins and outs of a pig like you wouldn't know. And so they brought pork farming and pork cooking techniques with them. And so rendering lard is a technique that many a Persian cook had to know how to do in the old days. Now we just make sure we have our cooking oil when we go to the grocery store. But with the advent of oil being more readily available, or the transition into using rendered fats to cook different dishes, the fried Johnny cake came along. And most of us are used to the fried Johnny cake. That's what you get with your fried fish. That's what you get at the village. That's what you get if you go to Chicken Shack right now for chicken and a Johnny cake. And I think some they might bake their Johnny cakes. But they still have a little chew to them like they're fried. I think they're fried Johnny cakes, to tell you the truth, but they might be baked. But that just shows you the skill and the uniqueness of Persian cooks, is that everybody has their own way of making something. So this person that you were speaking about does not like holes or bubbles in their Johnny cake. Fine. So they probably bake or adjust their recipe so that it doesn't have too much leavening in it to bring it rise and make those bubbles. That's from the baking soda, baking powder. But if you like a little bubble in your Johnny cake, I know I do, you can just add a little bit, make it more baking soda and bake them. And again, watch them. Or you can fry them. Fried Johnny cake is always going to give you a good bubble. If you don't have a good bubble in it, then your fried Johnny cake needs to come out and you have to start over. So there's nothing wrong with a baked Johnny cake. There's nothing wrong with a Johnny cake with no holes in it. But if I have to choose between whole and no hole, I like a bubble in my Johnny cake. That's just me. Okay. So, my friends, I hope that this was helpful. I'm so sorry that it wasn't alive. I really tried my best. Sometimes I got to get the kids to show me how to do stuff, and but this was clearly just a tech issue, and I just really wanted to be outside because it's a gray day, but anytime you are out under God's sky is a good time. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to fast forward to any little parts that don't mean anything to you. But if you found this video helpful, please make sure to subscribe if you haven't already become a subscriber. Please invite your friends to subscribe. Please share my link on Facebook, on Instagram. I don't really have a presence there, and so the more people I can draw in to YouTube, the better. So I do appreciate anybody who wants to do that. And if there's something you'd like me to try, if there's a question you'd like me to try to get answered, I will do my best. I don't propose to be an expert. I don't propose to know all things. I know what I know. I learn what I can. And when I get it right, I pass it on to you so that you can continue to pass it on to your loved ones. And we keep our beautiful, unique, and wonderful Crucian cooking culture alive. One VI, but always love for St. Croix. Bye bye, everyone. Have a wonderful and blessed Sunday.